Hey guys, this is part 2 of the epic only Void Rift on hard mode. Because some of part 1 of hard mode using only epics took me quite a bit of time to figure out, it was quite hard to record it and keep trying to discuss my strategies and then failing and then restarting. It would have been a very long video if I included all of the fails on a couple of stages. So because of that, for the second stage and for the third phase, I decided to just record the battles while I was in my pajamas with my feet up, and then I can annotate over them in post, which is what I'm going to do in this video. I did ask if this was what people wanted, but I kind of recorded it before I got some of the responses back, so I'm very sorry. But I will say in this video, pretty much all of the part 2 rounds I completed in the first attempt. I'll put a screenshot up of my file library. You can see the timestamps are like 3 minutes apart. So yeah, I didn't have any real troubles with this stage. I think a lot of the tactics discovered in part 1 were incredibly useful throughout. I did have a lot more trouble in part 3 on Toreador, but we'll get to that in the next video. So let's jump into it. Let's have a look at part 2, and I'll discuss some of my strategies and thoughts in all of the individual stages, as well as at the very end I'll post pictures of all of my characters' gear so you can look over that if you're interested. Alright, so let's get started. Okay, so we have the first mission. Now this one is up against Ludwig again, so he does some of his normal stuff, but most of his toolkit isn't included in this mission, so it is quite simple. I start with a strong defender up top. I think I did try this twice. I don't think there was many attempts, and I placed down Greed to support. I personally really like Baron and Olag as far as epic defenders go, and here's just a quick look at some of the enemies in the map. You can see they do have some good level of magic resistance, but most of the enemies are outside of the caster mages that kind of swoop along. Most of them don't have very high. The reason I place my vortex like this is because it allows me to cover all of the defenders I'll place in the top lane, as well as everything on the bottom, including Iona there. Greed is not covered by Vortex, which is unfortunate, but it's not too big of a problem. And you can see there are skeletons coming down the bottom. Baron is holding top okay, and he has Greed helping him out. Iona is facing bottom by herself at the moment, and Maul is placed to cover the top 2 lanes, because he's got such a long attack range. I thought it was quite useful. And you can see Iona's ult gets popped, because she can just kill the bottom lane by herself. I noticed that the bottom lane is only spawning some skeletons. There's nothing big coming through that you need to actually tank, and they do sit around for quite a while. So I decided to put both my defenders up top, Olag down as well. These two are definitely my favourite defenders in the game from the epic side, and honestly you can use them throughout pretty much any content in the game. They're just phenomenal epics, Olag and Baron. So now we have some pretty big beefy guys. They will shred normal legendary fighters, so you do want to use a defender here. Obviously, if you're doing hard mode, you probably aren't using just epics, but these strategies will work in normal. They are the same levels, so that's kind of why I stuck with the test. And yeah, long range fighters behind the defenders would do very well here. You do need more damage up top, and that's why I used Maul in the end, because he has a nice ranging ult. I could have placed someone down like Brienne, or I could have put Janquar behind, but when I don't need to, I like to hold on to them in case anything goes wrong. You can see at the bottom the skeletons are kind of just doing the same thing. Iona's ult's back up, so she's not going to have any issues killing them. And yeah, at this point it's kind of just a waiting game to see if anything changes, but as it is, this is going okay. The only issue at the moment is that Greed is actually slowly dying, which is not ideal. But he's holding on okay for now, so no particular worries there. I do note that Iona is substantially stronger than Greed from at least my usage of him. He is still very good, but Iona costs less to deploy, and I think she has better damage. Greed does apply some very good debuffs though, some slows and some debuffs to increase the damage they take. And at this point there are 4 enemies left, so I think okay, I'm safe to place whatever I want. So I drop down Brienne for some extra damage. I put Janquar down because sometimes he can attack through when his ultimate is up, and I ult with Maul because it's a freeze and a slow, and it kind of just helps buy my defenders a bit more time for everyone else to get damage out. I despawn my Iona in case it takes a while, and then I can place her again to help out. But there's 30 seconds left of that, and all these guys are kind of getting wrecked. So yeah, no worries here. These guys go down quite comfortably, and I would say this is a really easy mission. There's not really a lot to it. Just the fact that you can defend the bottom with just Iona by herself, or any really good AoE mage will do, makes it a lot easier. So yeah, that is the first mission out of the way. Okay, so we are moving up to the second fight now. Ludwig again. The reason I check these all the time is mainly to see if there's any new abilities coming in, but also the resistances. So Ludwig's is standard. The Baron Salem's are kind of averagey, like just no real big defenses anywhere. They just have massive health. And the final enemies, the kind of casters that float by, have very high magic resistance. So you do want to bring some kind of physical damage. You can see I swapped Brienne out for Midan because this is a proper Ludwig stage, and you need to heal people while they're being grabbed by tentacles and all kinds of things. So I placed Baron first, just I find him a very reliable defender again. He's just great at holding lane. I like using Olag's Wall on my defenders for these stages, just because it buys me some time if things go right or if there are more enemies. Vortex goes down covering the entire platform. However, the boss will root and grab the last placed hero, so you do need to be aware of who you're placing to make sure you can look after them. Midan goes down because then she can cover more healing on Baron, which is going to be the main lane up top, and also help keep Vortex alive during this. There will be 3 tentacles spawning on this map, one to the left, one up top, one below. I place my Maul in this position because then he can cover quite well up top and hit anything that spawns there. And he's got such a long range, he doesn't need to be placed super close to it either. Plays Olag down bottom. He's only being healed by Vortex, but that's okay because he has a lot of self-shielding anyway, so he just needs topping up until his shield comes back. Baron's shield is very powerful and he has his own passive, which is great, but his self-shielding isn't up quite as often. So I was a little bit worried at this point because there's just so many enemies on the map and I don't really have a lot down to deal with it. I do have Iona facing down, but honestly Iona wasn't a great placement here. You do want more piercers on the bottom side to deal with these mages, and you need probably slightly more magic up top, but I think piercers are ideal in general. Now you see there is a tentacle spawned up top, so I need to get rid of it, but unfortunately my Maul was grabbed, though the allies will target them, they will prioritize them. So you saw Iona destroyed it, which allowed Maul to ultimate and wipe out the tentacles up top. Now my Baron is dealing with 3 enemies up top that he has to block, so that's getting a little bit tricky, but I'm slowly getting through them, but I definitely want some more damage up top. Iona as well is taking her time dealing with these, and at this point I place Greed down facing bottom, which again I don't think is a very good placement. I think I need to be using someone up top to help deal with that, because that's kind of messy at this point. They're just about getting by, and the ults from Maul are helping quite a bit. I place Janquar down behind in case anything slips through, but also when his ultimate is up he can cleave through that tile. So there is some utility there, but it's not ideal really. Now Iona can help deal with that, and Maul's ult can also hit that. So Maul is positioned to take out 2 tendrils at once, which is quite nice. And Greed gets grabbed, but that's okay because Greed is not doing a great deal. I was getting hit by the tentacle once because it took me too long to break it, which is quite a bit of damage on me, but it's okay. I have 2 healers, so it's not too bad. And yeah, I think this was a bit messier. I think the better option would be to find a way to use some more fighters so you can get some better damage out, and to probably use another marksman facing down and save Greed to help top, because top is very light on support at the moment. They're kind of just about getting by off the back of Maul. But it worked out okay because the pressure is kind of slow. It's just quite heavy pressure, but it's slow. So having 2 healers sitting on Baron, and Baron with Olag's Wall, he's able to hold it off throughout the mission, but my DPS was certainly not ideal in this run. I would recommend using some higher single target DPS than, focusing on mages as I have. I've just found these incredibly good during the run so far. Mainly Iona. Greed does a very good job as well, so I've been using them quite excessively. So that pretty much wraps up this stage. I would recommend taking 2 healers on any of these central island stages. There are a few of them, and you want to overlap as much as you can in the central island. And yeah, definitely take 2 good defenders if you can, and have a better single target than I did. You can see that even though Iona is a great hero, she was beat by Maul in this. Maul is just amazing for these stages. Anyway, let's move on. So this is the gold stage. These are quite simple stages really. I don't think too much about the tactics for this because I've not had any issues with them just yet. So this is the lineup I've taken for it. I like Janquar because he has got a free block as a fighter. Baron at the back is just a final gatekeeper. It helps kind of keep the enemies shepherded to the front while reserving the front for my bigger DPS, such as Aatrox or Wrath, for example. Aatrox seems like an unusual pick. He's not really used a lot. He's not rated highly. I actually quite like Aatrox. He has a very short placement cooldown, so he can be replaced quite often, and he does do pretty good AoE damage. He's like a Cerberus light. So I have him at the front expecting him to just die, but these enemies aren't quite so damaging, so it actually takes a while to die. I have a crossfire of Iona and Aeon. I also have Greed going up, and I have Aswan facing through from the back. That's because I found his ultimate very hit and miss before, so I was hoping that putting him this way would make it more reliably centralized, and it did seem to work. So I would recommend placing Aswan more to this line than across the lanes, because he'll end up just placing it as close as he can to himself, which isn't ideal. Aeon I find incredible during the Epic only run. I actually used her excessively, I found, throughout these runs, as you'll probably see. So I would recommend taking Aeon if you're fortunate enough to have her or got her from the Fusion event a few months ago. The crowd control helps quite a lot. And yeah, that's kind of the rest of the run. I dropped Raph on the top left because he can cover a bit, because I noticed some of the big guys end up getting stuck in that corner. It takes a while to get them down. Then I just rotate Aatrox in whenever I can. Yeah, that's kind of it, really. There's not a lot to say about these resource runs. I haven't had any issues with them at all so far. You kind of just chuck down a bunch of heroes with AoE damage, and you chuck down a bunch of CC. Aswan, Mari, Aeon, I think they're probably some of the best heroes to use. Again, I really like Aeon because she applies some great debuffs and is a Lord of the Curse faction, which grants some good damage to those guys as well. There we have it, that is completed. So next up is mission number 4, but very quickly let's take a look at the damage, and you can see Iona absolutely wrecking, but Aatrox is second with 16 million damage, so you definitely don't sleep on Aatrox too much. I think he is actually a very, very powerful hero. He just needs pretty good gear and he needs very clever placements. Nothing excessive, it's just he's very good for blocking stuff temporarily, to padding a bit more damage in front of fighters or defenders. I quite like using him in that way. Anyway, let's move on to number 4 now. So for this mission, I've taken slightly different heroes. You may have quickly seen there. Tario and Dolores I've taken in this team as well, though I won't get benefit from some of them as much as I would like to. First up, I place Olag, because it's Olag. Olag's just so reliable. Then I place Baron. I really wanted to try to make this work with a fighter in that position where Baron is, just to get some more damage on the enemies as they go towards Olag. But I couldn't get it to work. There's actually quite a lot of areas you need to cover in this mission, so I think this one did take me a couple of attempts. And yeah, most of it was trying to get more damage on the top side, but I ultimately accepted I just need to be a bit slower and more consistent with things. And I brought Dolores in just to boost my damage on the few heroes I do have up top. So now you can see Maul is down covering across the lane, and he can ult with Dolores' boost, and that will allow him to do quite a bit more damage. That's kind of his entire purpose there. Now Iona, I normally place at the front tile, as you saw I nearly went to there, but I decided to place her back. That is because there are some roaming mages that will attack her if she's at the front tile and she'll die. Whereas in this tile, where the skeletons pause, she can actually hit the front one still, and it will splash and hurt both. So there's no need for her to be placed at the front tile, and she can do her job just fine from there. And it's similar to the first mission where Iona can just handle this lane by herself because she's crazy good in Iona. And now I have 2 more deployment spaces left. So I place down a Tario facing back, and I place a Raph in the bottom right corner. Both of these placements are to deal with these tendrils, which are incredibly annoying. The reason I use Tario is because her ultimate allows her to attack map wide afterwards. You have 2 choices really. You can place someone facing across like I have with Tario to shoot the tendril, or you can actually place a fighter above them to just smack the thing. I realized later that you can use Aatrox quite effectively for these kind of positions, because he will do enough damage to kill it. You can despawn him and his respawn time is very low. So you see Raph handling it in the bottom right corner. Tario ults, but she's just shooting the boss. But the boss is never actually relevant in this run. He will just leave at some point. So yeah, in hindsight, I would use Aatrox instead, because he's able to kill it fairly quickly, or at least quick enough that it doesn't attack. You can despawn him and then you can place him in front somewhere else so that you can get a bit more ambient damage out. It's not crazy, it's just kind of min-maxing, but I think it's quite helpful. So another one comes up, Tario is still there so she can shoot that with no issues whatsoever. There's now loads of enemies coming in. I don't have a lot of damage, as you can see. I literally just have a single Maul. So I ult to hit across all of them with a Dolores boost up, and it is quite good damage. And his auto attacks are quite heavy while he's under Dolores' boost, but it is kind of messy still, as you can see. Iona's handling bottom fine, but I need Raph down there to handle one thing, I need Iona to kill the wave, I need Tario to kill the other spawner up here. It's just kind of a pain. You're spread quite thin on this level. You need to handle a few areas at once. If you let these tendrils attack you, it will do a lot of damage. I think they do take damage when they attack you, so you can tank it out, but it kind of sucks, and you don't really want that to happen. Unless if you can make it work, it's fine. But it's a lot of damage. It's really hard to soak all of those hits. Whenever I realize I've only got a couple of enemies left, I just despawn everything else, because maybe they come up if things go wrong. So I recommend doing it just for safety's sake. And that is pretty much the 4th mission complete. It's a bit tricky. It looks a bit simpler when you see a run that works smoothly, but it is actually quite a tricky run. Maul doing pretty much all the damage there. Tariel was not particularly useful, but I just needed someone to kill that. So again, I think Aatrox would be better positioned for that. Or even Daemon. I know no one really built him, but someone with a low spawn time that's a fighter. Okay, so this is mission number 5. This is the final mission of the second part of the Void Rift. So I start with Olag because Olag is incredible. I then go up with a Midan, but covering Olag and facing down so I can cover both lanes. Then I wait for the tendrils to hit Midan, and then I place my Tariel. The reason is if I place Tariel too soon, then the tendrils will hit her, and there is no one to remove them. The difference is this time the tendril root will actually kill the hero. So if it does land on one of your heroes and you don't break it, if you can overheal it, you'll still die. You need to kill it. So for that reason, I've doubled my healers to make sure that everything is covered in heals. And if you notice, Tariel is facing across, so she covers the entirety of the platform. She will do that and she will prioritize that, which is nice. And then that means I need to cover Tariel. So Iona is facing down, and Iona will actually stack, overlap, and cover my Tariel. So that means now the central island is completely covered. Every hero I have is covered in some way by another hero who will prioritize the tentacles. So that's my recommendation. Stack your healers, 2 AoE healers ideally, though one will be fine with a single target healer to support, and ensure that everyone is covered by some kind of DPS to make sure they can break the tentacles. There's a whole bunch of enemies coming here because ideally you want to kill them before they make it this far, but I realized that my Iona does enough damage that I don't need to worry. I placed my Aatrox back there so that I could block a bit if enemies did get through, though he only has a block of 1. Anyway, I despawn him when he's not needed, and you can see he's already available to be placed, so I place him on this tentacle, and he's not got the greatest DPS. You saw my Maul got slapped there, but he is able to kill it quite quickly, and then I despawn him, and look, a 20-second respawn time, which is quite low. So, and it's 6 cost as well, 6 cost points, so very easy to use. But we have another one here, so I probably shouldn't have despawned him, but it doesn't matter, because he's back up again anyway. So yeah, he makes quite short work of that. And everything else is pretty smooth. Everything is covered to a degree. My coverage on the bottom is definitely better than on the top. Top is only really Tariel. And sometimes Maul can help, but not really. It's kind of just if the enemies get too close, he can hit them. So it's pretty much just Tariel up top helping, which isn't ideal. I should have a bit more damage up there, really. I just noticed that the top seems to be a little bit smoother. The bottom gets overwhelmed by all these skeletons, so I wanted to focus on that a bit more. Maul ults help quite a lot as he can slow and freeze the enemies down. At this point, the boss Ludwig starts moving, which signals the final phase of the boss fight. You can see he summons 2 tentacles at once, so you need to make a decision. I was going to place Aatrox at the bottom, but I realized the boss is going top, and there's no enemies left on the bottom lane. So I just place Aatrox top to cover that lane instead, and I just accept that this is going to suck at the bottom. So the top tentacle goes down, I despawn Aatrox, and you can see I'm getting slapped quite hard at the top side. I do have some pretty good healers though, and it's only 1 tentacle hitting 2 people. So I just kind of leave them to tough it out, and it's not too bad. I also realize I can just despawn these guys as there's only 4 enemies left, and I think all of them are stacked up top. Can't really see it at the moment because it's just a big cluster. And I can place Aatrox again to deal with this one up top side. I can just ignore the one at the bottom because its AoE splash attacks don't actually hit anyone. And yeah, now I can just focus on killing the boss. In 20 seconds I'll have my DPS back and I can, get some more damage out and get this over with quicker. So now Maul is available to be placed. But I would rather have Iona because she's a slightly better damage. So I use her in the better position. Maul can kind of cover okay, and I have Baron down just in case anything goes horrendously awry. But the rest of this is pretty standard. There are 2 enemies left to clear, including Ludwig. So yeah, it's pretty smooth from this point onwards. There's not really too much to worry about. Anyway, that pretty much covers part 2 of this epic only hard run. Again, this will work for normal mode, it will work for nightmare mode as well, the strategies. I still haven't done nightmare, so I'm editing this video now so I can get on with the nightmare mode. Anyway, I hope this helps you guys out. Let me know what you think, and yeah, hopefully see you guys in the next video very soon. Take care, and bye-bye.